What kind of valet makes a disabled man feel like a burden? That question hit Simon McAllister like a punch to the gut. But it didn't come from a formal complaint or a lawsuit. It came from a brief customer service survey buried in a weekly report. The comment wasn't detailed. No names. No timestamps, just a sentence, but it stuck with him. Simon wasn't the kind of CEO who sat back and let his company run on autopilot. He'd built it from the ground up after buying a string of failing valet and parking service locations 8 years ago. Now they had 8 locations across the city, handling everything from high-end restaurants to medical centers. Business was steady, profitable. But lately, customer satisfaction at one location, an upscale shopping plaza in Westwood, had been slipping. His district manager, Jared, gave excuses. Staffing issues, holiday rush, new hires still learning. But none of that explained why reviews mentioned staff being cold, rude, or acting like customers were a hassle. Simon had never personally worked at the Westwood site. It had been acquired in a package deal and kept its original staff. He hadn't met most of them, and they had no idea what he looked like. That made it the perfect spot for him to go undercover. One Monday morning, Simon pulled into the Westwood lot in a beat-up sedan, wearing a cheap windbreaker, oversized sunglasses, and a fake mustache. At 51, he still looked fit, but he added a slight limp for good measure, just enough to sell the look of a guy down on his luck. The valet team was short-staffed. Only 3 guys were working the morning shift: a young guy named Diego, a quiet middle-aged man named Russ, and the supervisor, Caleb. Caleb sized him up the moment he stepped into the employee trailer. "You the new guy from Temp?" Caleb asked, not bothering to look up from his phone. Simon nodded. "Yeah, Sam, cool, try not to crash anything," Caleb muttered, grabbing his coffee. "You shadow Russ today." Russ gave Simon a small nod. "Stick with me, don't worry, it's not rocket science." The job was simple: greet customers, take their keys, park their car, and move fast. But it didn't take long for Simon to see the cracks. Caleb rarely moved from the trailer, barking orders through a walkie. He talked down to Diego in front of customers. Russ kept his head down, working hard, but you could tell the man was worn out. 2 hours in, Simon already had a headache. Caleb's attitude was toxic. At noon, a silver minivan pulled up. The driver, a man in his 60s with a prosthetic leg, stepped out slowly with a cane. There was a disabled placard on the rearview mirror. Before Simon or Russ could get to him, Caleb stepped out of the trailer for the first time and walked up to the man. "You can't park here, sir," Caleb said flatly, waving him off. "This is valet only," the man pointed to the placard. "I'm just here to pick up a prescription." "I was told I could leave it out front," Caleb snorted. "Yeah, well, next time call ahead. We're not a charity, either valet or move it." Simon's stomach twisted. The man looked like he wanted to disappear. He reached into his pocket with shaking hands. I'll valet it." Russ stepped forward, but Caleb took the keys himself. "Russ, take this one. Show the rookie how to handle an exception." Simon clenched his fists. He locked eyes with Russ, who looked like he wanted to say something but stayed quiet. The customer stood there, humiliated, until Simon gently touched his elbow. "I'll walk you to the door," Simon said softly. The man nodded, eyes glassy. "Thank you." "I didn't mean to cause trouble." After he disappeared into the pharmacy, Simon turned to Caleb, who had already disappeared back into the trailer. Russ shook his head. "That guy comes every week, picks up meds for his wife. Caleb always acts like he's in the way." "Why doesn't anyone say anything?" Simon asked. Russ hesitated. "People who speak up don't last long. Diego's already on thin ice." Simon looked over at Diego, who was sprinting back from parking a car, sweat pouring down his face. "Has corporate ever visited here?" Simon asked. Russ chuckled dryly. "Not in the 3 years I've been here." Simon swallowed hard. He'd built this company to treat people right, customers and employees. And now, under his own name, one of his supervisors was treating a disabled man like a nuisance. He'd seen enough for day one, but he wasn't leaving yet. He was coming back tomorrow. And this time, he'd be watching everything. The next morning, Simon arrived early before the sun cut through the overcast sky. He parked 2 blocks away and walked in, still in disguise. Caleb wasn't in yet. Only Russ and Diego were prepping the podium and key box. Russ was taping a handwritten sign to the booth window. "Please wait for attendant." Simon approached without speaking. Diego looked up and nodded, eyes heavy from lack of sleep. "You get any rest?" Simon asked. 4 hours, maybe," Diego muttered. "Got off late last night." "Caleb had me closing solo." Russ didn't look up. He was fumbling with the tape dispenser, hands slower than yesterday. "He left early again, before 7, Diego replied. "Said he had company stuff to do. He just sat in the trailer until he walked out." Simon leaned against the booth. "How often does he leave early?" Russ gave a quiet exhale. "Most days. If he sticks around past lunch, it's rare." Simon didn't reply. A black SUV pulled up. Russ straightened his back and jogged forward. Diego followed. Simon watched closely. The woman inside didn't roll down her window. She cracked the door open and tossed the keys onto the pavement without a word. Russ picked them up silently, gave a polite nod, and drove off. Diego handed her a claim ticket through the glass. When she walked away, Simon asked, "She like that with everyone?" "Only when she's wearing heels," Diego replied. "Pretty sure she owns half the stores here. Caleb lets her park for free." Simon raised a brow. "We're comping regulars. Only ones who look like they can complain to someone important," Diego said. "If you're loud, rich, or angry enough, you get a pass. What about the families?" "The ones here for the pediatric clinic upstairs," Russ returned and answered without looking away from the valet board. "We're supposed to charge everyone, but Caleb lets some people slide. Others he hassles. Depends on his mood." Simon nodded slowly. A line of cars was forming already. By 8:30, the lot was full. Russ and Diego were moving non-stop. Simon did what he could, grabbing keys, running to the far end of the parking structure, jogging back uphill, but he couldn't keep pace with the two of them. Caleb strolled in after 9, dressed in designer sneakers and a hoodie with the company's logo. He had a smoothie in one hand and earbuds in. He didn't acknowledge Simon. He walked straight to the trailer, unlocked it with a flourish, and shut the door behind him. Simon paused at the keyboard as Diego came back, panting. "This happen every day?" Simon asked. "Every day," Diego said. "He doesn't even pretend anymore." 10 minutes later, trouble pulled in on 4 wheels. A yellow sports coupe screeched to a stop just inches from the booth. The driver, a man in his 20s with mirrored sunglasses and a wireless headset, jumped out before the car came to a full stop. "Move it fast," he barked. "I've got a meeting in 5. Simon stepped up. "We'll need your name and number." The man tossed his keys. "Why, I park here every week." "Caleb knows me." Simon caught the keys just as the passenger door opened. A teenage girl stepped out, head shaved, wearing a surgical mask and oversized hoodie. She clung to a stuffed elephant with both arms. The man looked back. "Come on, sweetie. We're late." Simon stepped aside as they passed. Then he turned to Russ, who had just returned. "Do we really let people drive like that into a pedestrian zone?" Russ ran a hand down his face. "He's one of Caleb's friends, always parks like that." Simon didn't answer. He parked the car, then came back to find Diego being berated by a woman in a peacoat. "You charged me for 27 minutes, she snapped. "I was inside for 20. Diego tried to explain the system, how it rounded up after 15. "Don't give me policies," she said. "Get your manager." Before Diego could answer, Caleb emerged from the trailer, sipping the last of his smoothie. "What's the issue?" he asked, voice syrupy. The woman turned, instantly changing tone. "Just a small billing mistake." Caleb smiled at her, then looked at Diego. "Fix it?" "But I said fix it," Caleb interrupted. Diego nodded, teeth clenched. The woman beamed and walked off. Caleb turned to Simon. "If you want to last, learn something. Arguing with customers doesn't help. Smile, nod, move on." Simon said nothing. His jaw tightened. He stepped back and watched as Caleb returned to the trailer like nothing had happened. Shortly after noon, the same man from the pharmacy yesterday pulled in again. This time, Simon moved fast. "I've got you," he said, taking the keys gently. The man looked surprised. "You're new," Simon nodded. "Just started. I'll keep your car close." The man smiled faintly. "Thanks. My wife's in chemo again today. I hate leaving her alone too long." Simon nodded, throat tight. "I'll bring it around as soon as you're ready." The man walked slowly toward the elevator. Simon parked his car in a shady spot near the exit, then returned. Inside the trailer, Caleb was scrolling on his phone. There were unopened invoices, a half-done schedule, and a pile of valet tickets with no match. Simon stepped in and shut the door behind him. Caleb looked up. "You lost," Simon locked eyes with him. "You let friends bend rules, you neglect every part of your job, and you treat the staff like they're disposable." Caleb blinked. "Excuse me," Simon pulled off the mustache, then the sunglasses. Caleb's jaw dropped. "Wait." "You're Simon McAllister," he said, voice level. "CEO." Caleb stood up fast. "I didn't know, you knew enough to protect your friends," Simon said. "And you knew enough to humiliate a man picking up medicine for his wife." "I was just trying to keep things running smooth." "You're fired," Simon said, voice firm. "Effective immediately. Collect your things and hand your keys to Russ." Caleb looked stunned. "You're serious?" "I've never been more serious," Simon said. "Get out." Caleb opened his mouth, closed it, then grabbed his hoodie and stormed out. Simon followed him to the booth. Russ and Diego were mid-shift, still working non-stop. Customers waited in line. No one had time to process what was happening. Simon stepped forward, raised his hand. "Quick announcement," he said. "This location is under immediate review. Caleb is no longer with the company." Russ froze. Diego turned, eyes wide. "Russ, you're now acting supervisor," Simon said. "I'll be here the rest of the week. We'll backfill staffing. No more shortcuts, no more abuse." Russ swallowed. "Understood." Simon turned to Diego. "You've been holding this place together. That ends now. You'll get proper breaks and a raise while we assess this location." Diego blinked. "Are you serious?" "You deserve better," Simon said. "So do our customers." He looked down the line of waiting cars. "Let's clean this up." Russ nodded. "We've got it." Simon stepped behind the booth and picked up the next set of keys. He wasn't leaving, not yet. He needed to see how deep this went. And he needed to make sure no one here ever got treated like a burden again. By Wednesday morning, word had spread. The Westwood Valet team showed up early, but the usual tension had shifted. Caleb's absence left a vacuum, and though no one said it outright, they moved differently, less guarded, more alert. Simon was there before sunrise, still in street clothes, no longer undercover but not yet back in a suit. He didn't want to hover, but he also wasn't ready to hand the reins over. Russ arrived with a clipboard instead of just his badge. He typed out a basic schedule and route rotation, something the team hadn't had in months. He was nervous but prepared. Simon approached him as he double-checked the key box. "You sleep at all?" Simon asked. "Not much," Russ admitted. "Kept second-guessing the shift plan." "Looks solid," Simon said. "But if it breaks, fix it in real time. Don't wait." Russ gave a quiet nod. "Understood." Diego came jogging up from the far entrance, breathless. Someone dumped trash in the front lane, 3 bags, blocking the drop-off. Simon followed Russ and Diego around the bend. Sure enough, crumpled garbage bags had been tossed just feet from the valet stand, spilling takeout containers and broken hangers into the curb lane. The smell was already drawing flies. "Security doesn't sweep this side?" Simon asked. "They do," Diego said, "but only after 9. Simon scanned the alley behind the plaza. A delivery van was parked half on the sidewalk, engine running. 2 workers were leaning against the back, smoking. He walked over. "You know who dumped this?" One of the workers shrugged. "We saw a guy in a white pickup around 5. Didn't catch the plates." "Next time, grab a photo," Simon said. "This is a commercial entry. If someone's illegally dumping, we report it." The other man nodded. "Will do." Simon turned to Diego. "Get gloves, I'll help clear it." "You don't have to, I do." By the time they finished, the morning rush had begun, and the line stretched to the end of the block. Without Caleb, the pace didn't slow, but the atmosphere changed. Russ kept things moving without yelling. Diego took initiative, rotating between parking, greeting, and pulling cars without being told. Even the customers noticed. Several thanked the team for being more organized than usual. But not everyone was impressed. At around 10, a sleek black sedan pulled up, engine humming. A woman stepped out, tall, early 40s, wearing a sharply tailored pantsuit and narrow sunglasses. Her heels clicked against the concrete with practiced precision. She didn't look at Simon or Russ. She went straight to Diego. "Where's Caleb?" she asked. "Gone," Diego said. "He doesn't work here anymore." She raised an eyebrow. Is that right? Simon stepped forward. Can I help you? The woman took off her glasses slowly. I'm Dana Whitmore. I handle commercial leasing for the property. Caleb was our point of contact. Simon extended his hand. Simon McAllister, I own the Valet firm. Her hand barely brushed his. You're the one who fired him. I am. She folded her arms. He was efficient, never bothered us, always comped our anchor tenants. Now I hear complaints. From who? Simon asked. She didn't answer directly. One of our tenants said your guy refused to move a car from the fire lane. That's not how we keep long-term leases. Simon didn't blink. We don't move illegally parked vehicles unless directed by security or emergency services. That's policy. Caleb understood that flexibility is part of good service, she said. No, Simon said calmly. He understood how to avoid confrontation by bending rules for the loudest voices. Dana's face tightened. I hope you're not implying anything. I'm stating it plainly, Simon replied. This location hasn't followed company protocol in months. That ends now. Russ stepped forward. Ma'am, if a tenant has an issue, they can bring it to me or Simon. We're happy to adjust when it's reasonable. Dana looked at him like he'd spoken out of turn. And who are you? Shift lead, Russ said. Effective as of Monday. She turned back to Simon. I'll be speaking with corporate. You already are, Simon said. Feel free to reach out again. She didn't reply. She got back into her car and drove off without another word. Once she was gone, Russ exhaled. She's been here longer than most stores. She'll test us, Simon said. Stick to policy. Around noon, a delivery van clipped the corner of the valet booth as it turned too sharply. The metal frame screeched, knocking the keyboard sideways and splintering one of the support beams. Diego jumped back just in time. The driver barely slowed. Russ ran after him, radio in hand. Simon knelt beside the booth, inspecting the damage. The side panel was cracked and 3 keys had fallen behind the cabinet. Booth's compromised, Simon said. We'll need a replacement. Diego crouched beside him. How long does that take? Too long, Simon said. We'll improvise. He called corporate and ordered a mobile tent unit to be delivered by morning. Until then, they'd operate from folding tables and clipboards. Not ideal but safer than waiting. That afternoon, Simon pulled Russ aside. You ever run a full location? He asked. Russ shook his head. Never had the chance. You're getting it now. This isn't temporary. Russ hesitated. You sure I'm not flashy? I don't need flashy, Simon said. I need consistent. Russ gave a small nod. Then I won't let you down. Later that day, Simon sat on the curb outside the lot, sipping water when Diego approached cautiously. I didn't want to say anything earlier, he said, but there's something you should know. Simon looked up. Caleb used to take tips from the weekly drop. Not all of them, but enough. Said it was for expenses. Did anyone report it? No one wanted to get involved, Diego said. He always covered it with fake receipts. Simon stood. You see him take it? Twice. Small envelopes. He said if I ever repeated it, I'd get fewer hours. Simon closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them. Thank you for telling me. I wasn't sure anyone would believe me. I do, Simon said. We'll audit the books. And if there's theft, it'll be handled. Diego nodded, then returned to the lot. As the sun dipped behind the plaza, Simon watched the team finish the shift. They were tired, but still moving with a kind of cautious optimism. No one had to be told what to do. No one was being berated. And no one felt invisible. Simon didn't leave right away. He stayed long enough to see Russ walk the property with a flashlight, checking every corner. He stayed to see Diego offer a bottle of water to an elderly couple waiting for their car. He stayed until the last keys were returned and the booth was locked down. Only then did he head to his car, a quiet certainty settling in. This wasn't fixed yet. But for the first time in a long while, it was finally on the right track. Simon arrived at the plaza before sunrise on Friday, parked in the far corner, and sat quietly in his car for a moment. The air was still, the sky just beginning to fade from black to gray. He glanced at the empty booth, now a temporary pop-up tent with a folding table, 2 stools, and a small lockbox. It wasn't ideal, but it was serviceable. More importantly, it was honest work, being done by people who showed up for the right reasons. He stepped out, pulled on a branded jacket, and made his way over. Inside the tent, Russ was already arranging the key tags, a thermos by his side. His eyes were tired but alert, and his movements had a quiet certainty. He looked up as Simon approached. "Morning," Simon said. Russ gave a short nod. "You didn't have to be here this early." "I did," Simon said. "I want to see how the team holds up without interference." Russ hesitated, then asked, "You think they're ready?" "They're proving it one shift at a time," Simon replied. "But today's going to test them." Russ raised a brow. "Something I should know about." Property management scheduled a walkthrough. Dana and 2 others from her team. Russ didn't flinch. "Let me guess, looking for a reason to push us out." Simon didn't answer immediately. He reached for the clipboard and flipped through the updated route map. "They're looking for consistency." "If that makes them uncomfortable, that's not our concern." By 7, Diego had arrived, along with a part-time hire named Lena, whom Simon had fast-tracked through onboarding earlier in the week. She was sharp, mid-20s, and had previously worked at a hotel valet team downtown. She knew how to move under pressure, but this was her first day here. Simon stepped aside to let Russ handle her orientation. It was his team now. As the morning rush built, Simon stayed near the perimeter, observing. Diego was quieter than usual, focused. Lena moved quickly but checked in often, making sure she got the procedures right. The lot filled steadily, and by 9 they were near capacity. That's when a minor storm rolled in. A white delivery van swerved into the drop-off zone, music blaring. The driver, a man in his 30s with a corporate badge clipped to his collar, stepped out and tossed a plastic bag onto the booth table. "Pharmacy delivery," he said. Russ stepped forward. "There's a designated spot for drop-offs, around the back." "Then move the cones," the driver said. "I'm not walking 2 blocks. "You're not blocking the fire lane," Russ said, voice even. "Please move the van." The man laughed. "You think I answer to you? I've been making this run longer than you've worked here." Simon stepped beside Russ. "Move the van." "Now?" The driver shot him a look, then glanced at the ID badge clipped to Simon's jacket. His expression faltered. Without another word, he walked back to the van, slammed the door, and rolled out. Simon turned back to Russ. "You handled that right," he said. "I've had practice," Russ muttered. Simon was about to respond when his phone buzzed. A message from the district finance team flashed across the screen. The preliminary audit of the Westwood location's cash logs was complete. Multiple discrepancies over the past 6 months, small amounts, but consistent. Enough to confirm what Diego had reported. Simon slid the phone back into his pocket. By 10, Dana arrived, flanked by 2 colleagues, one from property leasing, the other from facilities management. All 3 wore similar expressions, polite, controlled, vaguely skeptical. They approached the tent as Russ stepped forward to greet them. "Welcome," he said. "We're mid-cycle, but we can walk you through the layout." Dana looked around. "Is this permanent?" "No," Simon said, stepping in. "The booth was damaged by a delivery vehicle earlier this week. Replacement is scheduled for install Monday." Her colleague, a tall man with wire-framed glasses, frowned. "Is this safe?" "We've cleared it with security and fire code," Russ said. "It's temporary but stable." The leasing rep, a younger woman with a handheld tablet, started taking photos. "We've had tenant complaints about valet congestion, service delays. Are those being addressed?" Russ gestured to the route map. "We've added a secondary rotation for overflow, and we've logged average wait times. They're down almost 30% since Monday." Simon handed her a printed copy of the tracking sheet. "Every vehicle logged, including timestamps." Dana narrowed her eyes. "That's not the issue some of our retailers raised. They said valet staff were refusing to retrieve cars quickly for VIPs." Simon looked her in the eye. "We treat every customer with respect, no preferential treatment, no exceptions." Her lips pressed into a tight line. "Some of those VIPs sign long leases." Simon didn't flinch. "And we're here to support all tenants equally. That includes the families who come for medical services, the seniors who need extra time, everyone." The facilities manager spoke up. "I'll admit the zone's cleaner than usual, no loose trash, no blocked lanes." "Whatever changes you made there working." Dana said nothing. After a few more photos and notes, she gave a curt nod and walked off. Her team followed. Simon turned to Russ. "That could have gone worse." "I'll take that as a win," Russ said. They turned back to the tent just as a car pulled in an old hatchback with a cracked windshield and a missing hubcap. A woman stepped out, holding a toddler on one hip and a paper bag of prescriptions in the other. She looked around nervously. "Hi," she said to Simon. "Is it okay to leave the car here for a minute? I just need to get my mom from the elevator. She's in a wheelchair." Simon nodded. "You can leave it. We'll keep an eye on it." She smiled, relief washing over her. "Thank you. Most places just wave me off." As she disappeared into the plaza, Russ looked at Simon. "You want this job back?" he asked. Simon shook his head. "No, it's yours. Just keep doing what you're doing." By 1 o'clock, the shift was winding down. Lena had found her rhythm, and Diego was rotating out for a short break, the first one he'd taken in over 4 hours. Simon stepped aside, watching as Russ walked the lot, checking each vehicle against the log before marking them for return. Simon's phone buzzed again. A final report from HR confirmed the termination of Caleb's employment had been processed, and the audit would be forwarded to legal. No fanfare, just protocol, quiet accountability. He walked over to Diego, who was sitting on a bench sipping water. "You good?" Simon asked. Diego nodded slowly. "Feels different now, like we're actually allowed to care." Simon sat beside him. "That's the point." Diego looked over. "You think other locations are this bad? Some are worse," Simon said, "but we'll get to them. Not undercover again, I'm guessing." Simon smiled faintly. "Once was enough. Now I lead from the front." They sat in silence for a moment, the sound of tires and voices drifting through the lot. Simon stood and looked out over the team, Lena guiding a customer to the waiting area, Russ double-checking the key log. A couple of kids laughing as they got out of a minivan, waving goodbye to their grandmother inside. This was what he'd built the company for. Not just efficiency, not just profit, dignity. He turned back to Diego. "You've got a future here if you want it." Diego blinked. "You serious?" "Very," Simon said. "We'll talk next week, once things settle." Diego nodded, quiet again. Simon walked back to the lot, his jacket catching the afternoon breeze. There was nothing glamorous about the work, no spotlight, no applause. Just a team doing the right thing, one car at a time. And for the first time in far too long, Simon was exactly where he needed to be.